Thank you for being here. This is the last committee meeting for the House Agriculture for this session. I think future Chair Carlin will have lots of meetings. No, I'm just we'll see. I don't know. That'll be quite an election, but well, what we wanted to do today, it's almost kind of a capstone, and some other things didn't work out. And so hopefully the committee that gathers in January next year will clean up some of the things we maybe didn't get to that are still going to be important to Kansans. But we did this year some things about what goes on with the food system here in Kansas. And one of the groups that was here was the Kansas Food and Farm Coalition. And they did a good job the last time, and there was still more to talk about. And so this informational hearing is kind of part two of that, to bring in those that are, I guess you might say, boots on the ground, and some things that are working. And so hopefully you have some questions on what is and what isn't working, and some successes, and maybe some of the things that roles maybe that the state can play in making this so folks have adequate and nutritious food to eat. So with that, we will get underway, and first up we'll bring in Deputy Kelsey Olson, Deputy Secretary Kelsey Olson from the Department of Agriculture, to kind of, I think, bring an overview, maybe in greetings and whatever you want to talk about. So thanks for being to committee.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Rogers and members of the committee. It's nice to see you guys again, hopefully one last time this session. I just wanted to provide a little bit of information on what the Department of Agriculture has done since 2020 in regards to the local food system. Certainly in the spring of 2020, you may have recalled, even as a consumer yourself, when you went to the grocery store, you may have seen some shortages of access of a number of things. There was a toilet paper shortage. We've seen bread shortages, eggs, a number of items. Meat was in limited supply. And largely that was not due to a supply issue, but really a logistics issue and supply chain movements. But during that, we certainly saw the need, consumers turning to direct and locally grown and available foods much more than we'd ever really seen in history. So due to that, just some pieces that we've seen, our local meat processors, we've quantified, we saw an increase of 23% of cattle being processed locally that was not there prior to the pandemic. Many of our specialty crop growers and our direct-to-consumer entities have shifted their business models. I think you'll hear from some today that talk about how they created a mobile delivery service and an online portal that they did not have prior to the pandemic. But many pivoted, but there were still needs and shortages out there. So when the CARES Act funding became available, one of the programs that the Department of Agriculture administered was the Securing Local Foods Grant Program. And this placed just under $12 million in our food systems. These grants went to food processors, to meat processors, to specialty crop growers, food banks, and even church food pantries across the state in 80 different counties to go and support and to create a more robust system. This helped cover some of those additional costs that maybe the growers or the processors had in getting to that consumer, and as they created new channels and supply channels to provide that direct and local option to consumers. I provided a sheet in the testimony that has a summary of the information that we did provide. And you can see we had a total of 257 grants that we awarded with that $11.7 million. But we had requests that exceeded $30 million. We were not able to fund all of the requests at the amounts that they asked for. And then as we go further down, you can see the breakdown of where we spent those funds. And there's also a list there of items that were were provided, and some of our other conferees will provide a little bit more detail of how they spent the funds. But this was the first time that the department had provided a grant of this nature. It was a big undertaking for the agency, but we were very proud to insert these dollars into Kansas counties. The consumer's interest, as you know, has not shifted. We can still see the interest in that direct-to-consumer buying pattern, and our producers have continued to meet those needs and provide where they can. But there's certainly a lack still remains in creating a more robust local food system that we see as a need that's out there. And one of the projects that the Department of Agriculture submitted to the Spark Committee was an additional request of $20 million to continue this project and look at some other ways that we could continue supporting the local food systems and assist the Kansas economy and make it more robust where possible. So that's out there. We've made that request. It's pending. We're awaiting word from our Spark Committee members. But we are proud to do our part and to serve this aspect of agriculture and to continue supporting the Kansas needs to consumers and our producers and growers overall. So happy to stand for any questions now or at any point in time.
All right, questions for Assistant Director Olson? You're not done, so don't sit down yet. So let's play it out then. Say Spark doesn't happen. Or have you had some conversations of this being maybe an ongoing and maybe the ask might be less, maybe a $5,000 to $10,000 or $10 million request to make this a part moving forward? Is KDA the best place for it? I don't know. Have you had those conversations?
We've had some conversations. We think this is a program that we could grow and develop in the future. It's something that we'd like to have ongoing support and funds for, but we've just not been able to make those requests or felt that there was an appropriate time to do so. There are, when you start talking about the food systems, there's many avenues. You touch on education with children in schools. We certainly represent the grower perspective, the supply chain piece. There's a lot of facets that we believe we have a role in supporting and would like to support. And hopefully we'll continue to be able to support. There has been some additional federal funds that have been made available. The USDA has provided some grant opportunities specifically to meat processors. There's been 2 programs that have come out for meat processors that some Kansas plants have taken advantage of, and there's one currently going on that we expect to see funds coming. There's also been, USDA had a local farm to food box program that some of our specialty crop growers participated in that was very successful, and there's continued funding there. The Kansas Department of Agriculture is in the process of applying for a grant from the federal USDA for it's a local food enhanced program that's similar to the previous farm and food box program that they rolled out in 2021, but it's modified some, and that would shift some of the lift that USDA did and during that grant to the Department of Ag that we are trying to navigate through and figure out how we can best apply for that. Those funds, that specific grant, there's $2.5 million allocated to the state of Kansas. We're eligible for 1.6. Tribal entities are eligible for, the whole amount also, but we'll work to, that's what we can request at this point in time from the Department of Ag. So we're working to try to secure as much funding that is made available and put it to good use where we can.
What about supply chain? Have you had the opportunity to look at that, because we're just now months away from school being out and kind of this whole thing, because we are somewhat back to normal, but maybe some think those programs, have you had those conversations of how that might be mitigated as that kind of ramps back up again?
We continue to try to have those conversations, and I wish there was a clear, easy solution. And I'm open to all ideas and suggestions because it's not a straightforward path.
Representative Orr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Kelsey. Do you update your KDA website on these grant possibilities, or how can we keep track of that?
We could probably do a better job of regularly updating them. We try to circulate it with our staff, so when questions come in, we can direct individuals, and it's been a very fast-moving piece, but we don't have them posted on the federal opportunities, but we could certainly do that, is making them more known.
So right now, how do I keep track of this? I didn't understand.
There's not a good way.
Okay, I thought that's what you were telling me.
Yeah, we could do better if you'd
I
like.
guess I can use a telephone, is that correct?
You can call and we'll help provide you
Yeah.
where some of those opportunities
Okay, I
exist.
appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you. Other questions? All right, Kelsey, thank you. Okay, next up, Miranda, Klugershires, correct? We had a Zoom earlier, so this was a winner, I think. I don't know, but welcome to committee, and thanks for being here.
Now it's on.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. How many times have we done this? Okay. Thank you, committee chairman, and thank you, committee. Congrats on making it this far in what I know has been a daunting session for everyone. So my name is Miranda Miller-Klugesers. I'm the director of the Kansas Food Action Network, and I'm also a representative along here with my colleague from the Rural Center from the Kansas Food and Farm Coalition. We were here a couple of weeks ago to talk with you specifically about our own policy objectives. Today we're here primarily to back KDA in their Spark requests. So just as a reminder, KC Healthy Kids, the Kansas Rural Center, Harvesters, and the Kansas Food Action Network, we came together in 2021 to share our interests because we recognize how interwoven food systems issues are. So we've come together to support policies that strengthen Kansas food systems and the people who take part of them. As Kelsey mentioned, in late 2020, $11.6 million was allocated by the Spark Task Force for the purpose of shoring up local food systems in Kansas and rebuilding the capacity that had been lost during COVID. This money was administered to local communities via the Securing Local Food Systems Grant Program, which was managed by KDA. Grant funds, like Kelsey said, were received by 80 counties across the state, and beneficiaries, some of whom you'll hear from today, included direct-to-consumer producers, food processors, slaughter and processing facilities, food banks, food pantries, soup kitchens, farmers markets, retail food outlets, the list goes on. It's really hard to understate the positive economic impact we saw on food systems as a result of this funding. And as such, the Kansas Food and Farm Task Force is eager to see additional funding allocated from the money that we have currently sitting in the Spark Task Force coffer, specifically allocated towards shoring up local food systems in Kansas. While our individual organizations could have submitted individual requests for funding and run our own programs, we heard about the proposal that had been submitted by the Kansas Department of Agriculture, which Kelsey has mentioned, and we are in full support of their proposal and are instead here to back what they are doing, knowing that KDA has a clear vision for how to support Kansas communities and how to rebuild local food systems. And they also possess the necessary capacity, as they demonstrated through the Securing Local Food Systems grant, to manage something of this caliber. So although the Spark funding process remains somewhat unclear, we simply ask that members of this committee provide consideration and support to KDA's Spark proposal should it come across your desks. So I'm happy to stand for questions on that.
All right, Representative Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not super directly related, but just kind of curious. We've had a lot of discussion in this legislature about axing the food tax and then its effect on the consumer, obviously. Do you see any, what's the benefit to local farmers if we eliminate the food sales tax?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm also would be happy to ask any of the actual farmers that are here behind me. From the Food Coalition's perspective, it would do two main things. One, simply removing the burden of collecting food sales tax at farmers markets and farm stands just makes Kansas goods more competitive for the second. So not putting the burden of tax collection on local entities makes it easier for farmers to go there, sell their goods, and not have to worry about all of the rigmarole that goes with it. But two, we know that all of the surrounding states from us either have lower or non-existent food sales taxes. And I've heard firsthand from many producers, especially on the western side of the state, that they will go into Colorado or Nebraska to sell their goods there instead of in Kansas, simply for the purpose that they're more competitive there because there is no food sales tax. So because of those two reasons, we know that removing the food sales tax would be great for Kansas farmers. So anything you guys would add? No? Okay.
Representative Carlin.
Thank you, and you are correct. However, unless I got distracted while you were talking, the local cities do and counties do have sales taxes sometimes, so they would still have to collect and report some, but it would save them one report for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does help the consumer a great deal. So
Great
thank
deal,
you.
yeah.
Okay. Other questions? I would try your last name again, but I'll probably mess it up somewhere.
That's just fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All right, up next, a familiar face to some of us anyway, Chad Bontrager with Yoder Meats. Chad, welcome back to committee. Good to see you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Chad Bontrager. I own Yoder Meats. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with you today about the Spark grant for securing local food systems that Yoder Meats applied for and received in the fall of 2020. That grant was we applied for and received $100,000. Before going any further, I would like to just take a minute to highlight. Clearly, this microphone is for short people. Sorry, ladies. Before I go any further, I would like to highlight that the Kansas Department of Agriculture was excellent to work with in this process. We had a very high-quality experience with them. I don't have a lot of experience with grants, applying, receiving, writing, any of that sort of thing, but really have no complaints. KDA went out of their way to communicate the availability of the grant. We received notification through our trade organization, the Kansas Association of Meat Processors. We received email notification directly from KDA through, I assume, some sort of email distribution list that they maintain or whatever. And then our on-site meat inspector actually verbally told us, hey, this isn't available. You should look into it. Here's where you can find more information. So once we applied, the application process was very straightforward. It was easy to complete. Communication about where we were at in the process was ongoing and timely. We were assigned a KDA employee that worked with us from the time our application was approved until the grant was completed. One point of contact that either knew the answers to our questions or could find them and report back to us and kept us on the right path as well. So in my opinion, KDA really set the standard for how operations of this kind should be conducted by all government entities. And so we certainly appreciate the opportunity to work with them on that. A little bit about Yoder Meats. We're a family-owned Kansas agribusiness located in Yoder, about 8 miles south of Hutchinson. We've got 60 employees spread across 5 locations. In Yoder, we have a processing plant and a retail store. The plant conducts beef slaughter on Mondays and Fridays and hog slaughter on Tuesday, and then we work in lamb, goats, elk, buffalo, and deer as demand requires. We provide custom processing services as well as processing meat for our own retail stores. Cattle are sourced from Whiting and from Conway Springs, and hogs from Partridge. Lambs come from Yoder and from Westmoreland. Buffalo from Mound Ridge, elk from Garnett, and then the deer are local to Yoder as well. The retail store in Yoder houses our food processing kitchen, so we make We make products besides meat, so beer ox, cinnamon rolls, cakes, cookies, all of those kinds of things that we sell in the store, and then also wholesale out as well. In Wichita, we have 3 retail locations, and the retail location on West Street in Wichita houses our second processing plant. This plant doesn't conduct slaughter, it's strictly further processing. And then in April of 2021, we added our 5th location with a retail store in Lawrence. The plant operates at full capacity most of the time, especially during peak demand times. And so for our grant application, we proposed constructing new cold storage facility to increase our production capability. In the slower times of the year, we can produce more if we have a place to store that product. And so with meat, as I'm sure you can all understand, that has to be refrigerated or frozen, frozen if you're going to store it for any length of time. We also, we can look at adding production shifts down the road or other measures to increase plant production if we have the space to store the finished product. The increased storage also gives us the ability to stock up on incoming ingredients when they're available and when prices are good. The total project was $250,000 and consisted of a 68 feet by 48 feet storage warehouse. 816 square feet of that is freezer, 816 square feet is cooler, and then 1,632 square feet is room temperature storage and load and unload space. We can drive our forklift and pallet jack inside this cold storage space. And the grant really allowed us to move forward with this first step in increasing our production capability much sooner than we would have been able to otherwise. At this time, I'll stop. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Chad, thanks. Questions? Representative Orr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. We heard in the previous speaker that the product has increased about 23%. Have you experienced that same, and what are you expecting going forward?
I would say that we certainly have seen growth of that nature in some areas. So, for example, prior to 2020, the custom processing business was a shrinking business, not only at Yoder Meats, but in other operations such as ours across the state. Shrinking at the rate of, let's say, roughly 5% a year. And so one of the reasons that at our plant we produce for our retail stores and we continue to add retail stores is we're looking to offset that loss in custom processing. But in 2020, we saw that shift dramatically. Processing plant ramped up to full capacity. We went from probably, I would say, a 5 to 6 week lead time for slaughter dates to being booked for over a year, and that has continued. All of 2022 is booked, and we have people pressuring us to take bookings in 23. So, and I would say, that percentage increase is going to be in that 20% neighborhood. We also saw in 2020 when people couldn't find meat in the grocery store, they came to Yoder Meats, fully expected that they would return to the grocery store, as that supply chain hiccup subsided, but we've held on to many of those customers, and so that, and it's, Yoder Meats has always done well in the higher end products, steaks, certain roasts, some of the exotic meats, some of the more specialty processed type meats. But we saw a big increase in daily basic meat items like ground beef and pork chops and chuck roasts and that kind of thing. And that demand has stayed there. So it's not a 20% increase by any means, but we didn't see it subside like we expected that it would.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope it does continue, and it appears to me that it will. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other questions? Representative Mosier?
This is not a question so much as a comment, but I remember when you showed cattle in 4-H at the Jackson County Fair.
Yes. So my own kids are doing that now.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes, and we worked with your mom and dad with the Jackson County Livestock Association, and your mom, Vicki, and I were in the Jackson County Cattle Women together, and I'd just like to congratulate you on your success.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Very good. A couple of things, you mentioned 60 employees in 5 locations. And if I recall the story, I mean, when you purchased this, the family purchased this, it was a different time, not only the economy, but pre-COVID and all this. One, we keep hearing of people not wanting to work. Have you kept all those? Have you added, or did you keep all those 60 during the last 18 months, or how has that worked for you?
I would say that we would gladly hire some more if we could find them. We definitely have an employee shortage. We are paying through the nose for overtime, trying to keep up with demand with the folks that we have. We didn't really lose anyone, no more so than what I would say is normal turnover. But we've had an increase in demand that would justify some hiring, and we have hired people. It's not like we haven't hired anybody for 3 years, but we would hire more if we could get them.
What if somebody would come to work for you and do they need some sort of experience, or you will train them the right way to cut up the critters?
We'll teach them everything they need to know.
Okay.
But we're glad to pay for experience too.
Okay. Last question I have on this round anyway. USDA is kind of going through that process, trying to get money in for smaller processors. I assume you would qualify for that. Have you had a chance to look at that program? Is that something maybe that if some of the other Sparkman or other money that won't come through that you would look at utilizing USDA to expand?
So we're aware of both of the programs that Kelsey referenced. The first one is MPIRG, Meat and Poultry Inspection Readiness Grant. And basically, we're paying more attention to that one right now and have started the application process for it. The big piece of that is we have to switch to federal inspection, which we're not opposed to doing. We're currently a state inspected facility and likely would leave our Wichita plant as state inspected, but switch the Yoder facility to federal as part of getting that grant money. But that would allow us to do what is we are calling phase 2 of our expansion project. Now that we have the cold storage space available to hold more production, now we need to expand the plant to actually do more production. The second one, the dollar figures are much higher there. I believe that they will pay, it's $20 or $25 million per project, but maximum of 20% of the total spend. So as an entity, we've got to have the funds available ourselves before we go after any of that money. And I don't know that makes sense for us at this time.
And I said last question, I have one more question. So as you talked about the possible shift from state to federal inspected, talking amongst your peers, is there a concern that there will be enough federal inspectors? I know that has been a point of discussion even as this moves forward, while trying to exacerbate the issue, or to make it better. It could be a problem because we're having a hard time getting enough federal inspectors. Have you had those discussions with some of your peers?
We have, and I think that's a legitimate concern, but I would also say that I'm not worried about it. We don't have to become federally inspected. We're doing that to be compliant with their expectations. So if it takes a certain number of years before we're able to switch to federal, I think that's fine from our perspective.
Okay, very good. Other questions? All right, Chad, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Donna Pearson-McClish, Common Producers and Growers. Well, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Common Ground Producers and Growers.
There.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. And to the Vice Chair and the Ranking Minority Member, and the other members of the House Ag Committee. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Donna Pearson-McClish, CEO of Common Ground Producers and Growers. We're a nonprofit organization which provides fresh, locally grown produce to food desert and food insecurity areas in Sedgwick, Harvey, and Butler counties. And we are also expanding into Saline County to do urban and rural ag. It's an honor to be with you today, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee. My community service, I want to tell you a little bit about me. I come from a urban ag family. We've been farming since 1968 in Wichita, Kansas. I'm the oldest of 12. My brothers and I, 3 brothers and I, farm our land, and we've continued the legacy of our parents. Urban ag is something that's up and coming with USDA and with the agricultural scene in America, so we're proud to be a part of that. I'm also appointed by Governor Laura Kelly to serve on the State Board of Agriculture. I serve with the Kansas State Extension Board as secretary in Sedgwick County. I'm a board member of the Kansas Farmers Union, and I'm a delegate and policy member of the National Farmers Union, member of the Kansas Black Farmers Association, and serve on the board of the Kansas Rural Center, among others. I am part of an urban farm family in Wichita. The mobile market supplies fresh produce to a network of local growers, and our growers are paid for their labor and their fresh produce. I have Randy Couts here as our program advisor. He's my heavy lifter, my right hand. So before COVID-19, the mobile market was self-funded, which meant we were only able to make a minimum impact to our most vulnerable communities. The pandemic changed things dramatically for us. In 2020, the first urban agricultural grants were awarded through USDA, and we were one of 7 recipients across the nation to receive the grant. I'm happy to say that we are a part of the USDA's recognition of the importance and necessity of urban ag to help re-envision the way food is distributed in America and the inequities of the American food system on our most vulnerable citizens, including children and senior adults. We also have a youth program where we provide an opportunity for youth of the community to participate in the mobile market during the summer, so we can begin to build our agricultural network and grow our young farmers. But during the 2021 COVID pandemic, Common Ground collaborated with community partners to provide more than 1 million pounds of food to Wichita communities through the Farmers to Families food boxes. Normally, we have a seasonal market. When the COVID hit in 2020, our services needed to be uninterrupted. So we provided services during the whole of 2020 and 2021. And that looks like our season ran into the fall and the winter. Our season was produce, fresh, healthy produce. In the winter, the Farmers Families food boxes kicked in for us. So we helped to do that. Our network of growers this year helped provide more than 12,000 pounds of fresh, locally grown produce to our areas. In 2020, the Sparks grant was received just in time to add vehicles to our fleet. We started with the 1999 Pontiac 2-door for delivery. We went to a 2000 Honda Odyssey and a 1994 Dodge van. So when we got the grant, we were able to purchase 2 delivery vehicles, upgrade those delivery vehicles. We went from 2 to 4, which was very helpful because we retired the 1994 and the 2000 Honda Odyssey with over 300,000 miles on the 2000 Honda. We received $70,000 for the food system from the Spark grant and $10,000 working capital. So that helped us go from 0 to 50 during the 2020 pandemic and 2020 and 21. Our mobile market helps to reduce farmer food miles because we have growers that grow for us and then they take whatever they have left over maybe to the farmer's market. So as they are coming on and increasing our grower network, we're also understanding that we've got to keep more money in the farmer's pocket because 14 cents of every dollar now goes to the farmer, just 14 cents. So when we talk about taxing and eliminating the food tax, let's remember that whatever we do with that, we have to look at the producer, the production part of it, and we have to look at the consumer part of it. As a mobile market, we have to pay our producers an equitable wage. But because of the clientele we serve, which are in low-income, food desert, food insecurity areas, and if you don't know what a food desert is, it's an area where a person does not have a grocery store within a mile of their residence. So our seniors that have senior market vouchers, our SNAP people that have SNAP benefits, our low-income families, those families don't have access to transportation. During COVID, when we were locked down, the mobile market was the system that we could get food to our seniors and our low-income families. So as we talk about how we want to spread our dollars out, remember that the production side, the farmer needs an equitable wage, and the consumer needs an opportunity to buy good, fresh, healthy produce. So we have to come to a middle ground so everyone is benefiting from that. The pandemic has proven that the work we do as a mobile market is critical to the health and social equity of the communities we serve. The SPARK grant dollars continue to impact the work we do. So maybe it was a one-time infusion of funds, but those funds are still continuing to work in our communities. They were truly a game changer for Common Ground and Mobile Market, and we've expanded to Mobile Market and Mobile Food Hub. And we are very grateful for those grant funds that we got. Do we have any questions?
Questions? Representative Orr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be interested to know about the supply of fresh vegetables as compared to your demand.
The supply as
available to you?
Yes, we have a very solid supply from our growers. Our demand is greater than our supply. That's why we're always looking to add growers to our network. So we have a great demand because in the 67214 in Wichita, Kansas, we know that that's the poorest zip code in the state of Kansas. So when we service those customers, then their demand is, we need fresh produce. How can we pay for fresh produce? And we still have to pay our growers. So we're always looking and adding growers to our network, and growers that are saying, we will grow for you. And our growers know the people we serve, so we have a good relationship in keeping those costs down.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
Sure. Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many growers do you have?
Right now, we have 4 in our network.
Thank you.
4.
Thank you.
Couple questions. So how does this work? The mobile market, I mean, do you have, are folks buying or receiving a basket of variety? Or is it kind of an a la carte? I want tomatoes, I want cucumbers, I want eggplant, you know, kind of how it all kind of works together.
We have a wide variety of fresh produce. Go ahead. This is Randy Couts, our program advisor.
Good afternoon. As she stated, we do have a wide variety, and we service 32 senior sites in 3 different counties, Harvey, Butler, and Sedgwick County. And every senior site that we visit has its own culture. So we set up everything that we normally have gathered from our network of farmers on that day. So it's everything from collard greens to mustard greens to eggplant to bok choy, Swiss chard. But we have also added a component to Common Ground Growers and Producers where we do have an online portal where you can literally go online and place an order and either come to the location that we're at and pick it up, or we can distribute it to you after we're done during the course of the day with our senior sites. So we try to make our produce available based off of the individual culture of the senior site or the demographic of the neighborhood that we're in, but also specifically to you as a consumer based off of what you may see that you want from us on our online portal as well.
Oh, I'm going to make sure, because I know Terry's going to need that. Do you say your name again and spell it to make sure for the record we get that?
Yes, sir. My first name is Randy, R-A-N-D-Y. Last name is Couts, so it's C as in Charles, O as in Oscar, U as in Union, T as in Tom, S as in Sam.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, also, you talk about an equitable wage, so can you explain in your terminology, what does that mean, especially in light of where we are with wages right now in the system?
We need to begin to look at food consumption two ways. First of all, from the production standpoint, if we can infuse dollars into our farmers, they can keep their prices comparable, and then our end customer can afford fresh food. And we have to begin to think of food not as so much as a profit, but a policy, because we want everybody to have an equitable distribution of food across the board. So we begin to think of it as we're strengthening our economy with our farmers, our neighborhood and local economy with our farmers, infusing funds into that farmer network or into our farmers. And then we're transferring the savings of that to our end customer.
So, okay, so, again, I'm just trying to explain, or I'm not trying to explain, trying to follow it. Okay, so, say the growers, you have 4 growers. Do you contract and then come up with a price beforehand, and based on performance, they get paid so much per whatever, or is it a contract for X amount of dollars to grow X amount of food? I mean, I kind of understand the concept, but just trying to, because it is kind of a unique situation, because it's not hugely widespread, but just trying to figure out how that kind of all pieces together.
We pay our growers the wholesale price for each item.
Okay.
So if we have eggplant at $1.50 a pound, we pay them $1.50 a pound. And then we try to pass on the savings to our customer. So we usually do a wholesale price for our growers.
Okay, very good.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
and then I thought I just want to make sure
Yes.
how that all worked. Other questions? Yes, good. Representative Carlin?
Thank you. Just to clarify, so you pay $1.50 a pound to the grower and you charge $1.50 a pound to the buyer?
Not necessarily.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out. How do you
Yes.
mark it up, or what do you have to make this work?
It depends on the method of payment they're using. SNAP, we're a part of Double Up Food Bucks. So if you're familiar with that program, you know that they can spend $25 a day at the farmer's market, and they get $50 worth of produce. We're doing our senior market vouchers. Our senior market vouchers come in a booklet of 7 $5 vouchers. You cannot give them change for that. They have to spend the whole $5. So often we are negotiating our prices so they can stay within that framework of that $5 or whatever they want to spend with their senior market vouchers. So basically, whoever our clientele is, we're going to meet their demand with prices that they can afford.
Very good. Representative Minix.
Question? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Representative Minix.
I'm over here.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Nobody
I'm sorry.
notices me. I just want to know if you have family. You said in your bio you've been farming since 1968. Are you raising the next generations?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hopefully, yes. And that's why we're working with our youth in the community and hiring them during the summer. Last summer, we had 4 city youth that the city youth program paid for. This summer, we'll have 4 city youth, and we'll have 2 college students that a college is paying for. So we're wanting to infuse the passion for farming to our next generation so we can pass it on. Yes.
The benefit from what she's doing with these youth is almost similar to the benefits you're doing in your communities, and I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Sir, thank you.
Representative Haswood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really happy to see you here in your organization. I've been asking since this is my second year, but last year, my first year, minority farmers and ranchers and producers. You said you were a part of the African American farmers. I just wanted to know more about that and if there's any other minority groups, Hispanics, Native Americans.
Well, the Kansas Black Farmers Association is headquartered in Nicodemus, Kansas, historic black community, black farming community. There is a push nationally for BIPOC, socially disadvantaged women farmers. I've done several conferences on that. However, our minority farmers have declined significantly in the years because we don't have this, let me put it like this. We haven't had the support of USDA recognizing urban ag or some other entity there to support us. However, that is changing. I got a call the other day from Farm Services Agency and looking at how we can partner together to get the word out to farmers so they can know what grants or what money is available. Farmers don't always often do grants. We just don't have the time to do the paperwork. So that's another area that we could be supported. But yes, there's movement, and I'm happy for it. There's movement with USDA, there's movement with NRCS, there's movement with FSA. So I'm happy to see that movement and happy to be a part of that movement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are all of your farmers urban farmers?
Are they all urban?
No. Brian Mann is not.
No.
Okay,
No, all of them are not.
thanks.
Yeah, the majority of them are.
And I would invite everybody to come to Nicodemus. There's a big homecoming celebration. I believe it's the last Saturday in July. I've been there.
Yes.
I've been there every year that I've been down here.
Yes.
And Dr. Joella Holmes is the president of the Black Farmers Association. And it's a great history. It's a great thing. And there's a lot of good things going on there. Mr. Verl Schweitzer, who's from Nicodemus, played football at K-State and for the Packers.
Yes.
Is a farmer, bought some equipment for my family over the years. And you know, they do, there's a lot of things that go on there.
Yes.
Tap and some other crops are trying to grow. And you're exactly right. It has been a struggle to work with USDA to get in. We can go into that, but we only have till 5.
Things are getting better.
Yes.
Things are getting
Again,
better.
thank you so much for
Yes.
being here. Any other questions?
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you so
much. And up next, Scott Feldman from Juniper Hills Farm. Welcome to committee, and I understand you had a special guest on your farm this week.
I did. I guess it
Yes.
was last week, but yeah.
Last week, I guess that's
We
right.
were able to host Governor Kelly,
Yes.
Secretary
Welcome to
Beam,
committee.
and Undersecretary Olson
Yes.
last week. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Feldman, and I'm a first-generation farmer, what's the right way to put it? A local food distributor and a co-owner of a grocery business in Lawrence, Kansas. So in short, I'm a food entrepreneur, an agricultural entrepreneur. And I'm also a recipient of one of the Securing Local Food System grants. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed many issues within our nation's food system. I mean, think about this. As grocery store shelves went bare, farmers were terminating their produce crops, dairymen were dumping their milk, and ranchers were euthanizing their market-ready animals because of the lack of processing capacity. But as the global supply chain faltered, Kansas's farmers and ranchers, our processors and our distributors stepped up to the plate to help work day and night to feed our state and our citizens. to put it in short, our operation had to pivot almost immediately with the onset of the pandemic. I mean, overnight, our restaurants, our school districts, our institutional customers, such as some of the large Fortune 500 companies in Kansas City, shut down. And so our opportunity, for us, over half of our market disappeared overnight. And that's in March, after we've started our production, after we've started growing, and it was very scary. So we quickly pivoted to launching an online grocery business in under a week to better serve our community and feed our community at a time when people were scared. And in that first year, we served over 12,000 customers in the Lawrence area. Our farm in general grew, packed, and shipped more produce than we ever had before, necessitating the hiring of 12 additional full-time equivalent employees at our farm in 2020, many of whom had lost their jobs in the service industry. And thankfully, we were able to find them, retrain them very quickly, and keep them off of unemployment, and so keep them working and working for our food system. And, with their help, we were able to grow our operation significantly in 2020 and subsequent years to better serve our community and our customers, and really just our food system in general. And so that included, in 2020, the purchase of over $260,000 worth of other producers' products, packing over 25,000 boxes of produce for families in need, as Donna had mentioned, through the Farmers to Families Food Box program, and also growing and donating over 31,000 pounds of produce for our local food banks. So the $88,000 we received as part of the Securing Local Food System grant helped our operations expand our production and growing seasons, increased our storage and shipping capabilities, and allowed us to better connect with our customers who relied on us during the pandemic. I just kind of want to point out some of the highlights, and if any of you guys saw some pictures of Governor Kelly's visit to our farm last week, you saw a new greenhouse we were walking through and talking about. That's just one of the few things we did with that $88,000. That greenhouse is about 8,600 square foot, and in its first year of operation, it started a little late last year because we weren't expecting having to start tomatoes in December. But we were still able to get about 13,000 pounds of tomatoes along with a variety of other vegetables out of that new greenhouse. This year, we're projected to pull about 20,000 pounds off of that, and that's, 8,900 square foot? That's about a quarter acre. So pretty phenomenal yields out of a high production greenhouse, and we'll have tomatoes by the end of April, and so even before Memorial Day. We also built 2 grain bins, new grain bins at our farm for our organic grain side of our enterprise. And what that allowed us to do was become price makers, not price takers, in an organic food grade grain market. If you think about our state, there's not anywhere, if you're a non-GMO farmer or an organic farmer, to just, there's no co-op down the road you can just go store your beans in. So having that on-farm storage is essential in lieu of just having to find a truck during harvest season, which A, is not easy, and B, just shipping it off to Illinois or something like that, whoever's, accepting food grade grain at harvest. We expanded our operation shipping capabilities through pack house conversions, loading up dock expansions, and the purchase of additional refrigerated trucks, which allowed myself and my partner in the grocery business to better serve more Kansas communities with our products. And so increasing our cold chain, increasing the value of our products, and really creating a better product and experience for our customers. We also developed a new website for our retail side, which is now transitioning as people kind of return to normal into a website that's serving our wholesale customers. And so kind of creating a one-stop shop through our online grocery business for our chefs, our school districts, our institutional customers to purchase, their local proteins, cheeses, meats, and produce all through one spot and one set of distribution trucks. And finally, one of the last things we did with that funding is we invested into our employees. And so one of the things that was there was to be able to provide bonus or hazard pay for employees. And I have to say, our employees, the last 3 years, since the advent of COVID, have literally worked day and night at times to make sure that we are getting product out and into the hands of not just food insecure folks, but then our customers that we also rely on daily. So I don't want to drag on too much longer, but I do want to mention that the investment in local food and local agriculture and smaller producers like myself has a ripple effect. The greenhouses we purchased were purchased from a local manufacturer, and we were able to keep 3 full-time equivalent employees on staff to construct those last winter. The grain bins we purchased from a Kansas company, and the erectors that came and built the grain bins were a Kansas company. The concrete we poured for all of our projects was purchased locally, of course, and the men and women who poured and laid those forms were local to us. Our website developer was a local company, and you know, at the end of the day, our employees are also local, and so the more employees we're able to support with more hours of work and just wage and fair wage, you know, they take that back to their communities and invest that. And at the end of the day, I'm just one of the grant recipients. I forget the number that was mentioned earlier of how many folks receive these grants, but this is statewide, this ripple effect. So to kind of sum it up, I hope that this committee can really embrace what this investment, you know, I'd almost call it an investment in local food versus a grant program, what this investment can do, because it goes beyond just helping farms like myself. It turns into investments in our rural communities, investments in our local economies, and investments in strengthening our food system as a whole. So I hope that your support of KDA's goals can help continue this, you know, can help keep this program being a catalyst for investment in our communities. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. You seem to really love what you're doing, and that
Most days.
shows. What did you, with all this building construction and bringing, you know, spending in the state, do you know what you spent to get geared up?
So we received about $88,000. Well, we received $88,000 from the Securing Local Food System grant, and altogether our investments total about $170,000. I think
Assets. That's your assets that you built.
yes, and so between the receiving of that $88,000, there was approximately another $80,000 or so that we put towards that through our own expansion plans and cash flow. And then also worked with a local bank to take out a loan to continue that expansion. And so we really saw the opportunity. This grant was kind of that catalyst that took us to that next level of realizing we could expand and grow.
Do you work with that little restaurant downtown that was doing meals for everybody that wrote the book? Megan.
Oh, Ladybird.
Ladybird.
We don't. They don't buy much local food, surprisingly. Nothing against Ladybird, but maybe there's more opportunities there.
They're new, and their life changed as well with the COVID, and then she started giving away meals, basically. So maybe she would like to know about you. I don't know that she does.
Maybe she should appear before the last day.
No, it was a really interesting story, and she's a daughter of a friend of mine, so
and
I know that.
It was really impressive just to see, you know, not just the Lawrence community step up to the plate to feed their community, but the state of Kansas as a whole.
Yeah.
And it was really special and gratifying. Although, as I said, many days we were working 16 and 18-hour days, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. It was rewarding work. It wasn't exhausting.
Well, it's really good for me to see, you know, that amount of money, which is a lot, but it isn't in the scope of all the money we distributed this year. But it looks like it's there permanently for you to go forward and continue this work. And people will appreciate and learn to rely on you. And I think that's really good news. Thank you.
Representative Seibert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for being late. I had constituents from home, and congratulate you. You're a first-generation farmer. That's interesting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I'm a fourth-generation one, so don't hold that against me. But I was curious when you said the grain storage. What kind of grains are you doing to GMO? I've heard of different ones that do in barley and things like that for beer consumption. Can you expand on that a little bit on what you're doing?
Yeah, so it's relatively simple. I also grow commodity corn and soybeans as well on some rented ground, but our organic corn and soybean line is an organic yellow food grade corn that we are shipping to Oh, I believe it's going to end up in Des Moines at a tortilla company. So they're going to, process it into masa to then make organic tortilla chips. So being kind of sold onto the national market there. Our organic food grade beans are primarily used for tofu by a company in Missouri. And the remainder was sold to a local feed company in Southwest Missouri for organic chicken production. So we are not talking, 20, heritage corn or anything different than just traditional corn and beans, 8-row John Deere planter, 8-row cultivator, row walkers. It's not tremendously different than what you're probably doing on your operation. But that being said, the price points are much different. Well before any of the uncertainty in the grain market that's come about in the past month or so hit, we had our beans contracted at $34 a bushel, and that's 62 bushel beans. So, I mean, we're talking in terms of the investment in something like that, the ability for us to expand that and really, as a first-generation farm, make a good, sustainable living doing what we're doing. I'm one of the few folks on our Douglas County Farm Bureau board that is able to work full-time as a farmer, and it's because we've diversified into things to maximize our dollars per acre.
If I can, with one more. So when you talk about organic corn and soybeans, do you not use fertilizers or commercial fertilizers or herbicides, or like you said, 8-row planter and 8-row cultivator? I got that. That's what we did. My grandpa did it with 2, But how does it differentiate between organic and maybe what a friend of mine's raised sweet corn for farmers markets? What's the difference? Help me out understand what organic actually means.
So that's a great question. So our seed is non-GMO. That's part of the NOP, National Organic Program Standards. In terms of fertilizer and inputs, we're using quite a bit of chicken litter. We're also helping, at the end of the day, it starts with building your soil. Because if you can build a really well-balanced soil, you can utilize the nutrients that are already present in your soil. But on top of that is incorporating cover crops, better crop rotation, and we were hoping to have an airplane come on and spread clover and turnips onto our corn ground last year, and we just couldn't get an airplane to do it. But it's really about building a sustainable agricultural system, and that starts with proper soil management.
Okay. Other questions? Representative Minix.
I guess I'm partially responding to Representative Carlin's comments a little bit earlier. It appears to me that these people have taken that $11 million and used it as a type of gap funding and increased the services to their local area, and they've also vertically integrated their business plan. You're not selling commodities necessarily. You're selling finished product to the people in your community, and I applaud them for doing that. So if you take that $11 million, it would be interesting to do a fiscal study on this and see what the economic results. I'd say you're probably in the $50 or $60 million deal. I don't know what the dollar match on the programs were, but that's kind of a ballpark figure, I would say. And it's something, we're looking at gap financing and lots of things in agriculture. As the comments were earlier, a 14-cent return from the retail price, the farmer actually normally gets about 14 cents. I'm guessing in this young man's situation, he's garnering a lot more than that 14% of $1, and that's because of the vertical integration and how he's leveraged things. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right.
Ms.
Olson? I'm not done with you yet, Scott, but go ahead.
Hi, Kelsey Olson. I just wanted to respond to Representative Minnick's comments. We did not require a match with these funds. These were direct, just grant dollars that they were able to inject into their business models. So I think because it wasn't required match, that we were able to catapult them a little bit further forward than requiring a 50% match or even a 10 or 20% match. So it really enabled them to do more than what they could even dream of in some cases by not requiring that match.
Very good. All right, Scott, Representative Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How did you get so smart? I mean, okay, so a first-generation farmer, okay, it's amazing to me because farming is such an expensive industry. To have someone say that they're a first-generation farmer, first of all, is amazing to me. But then I would just like for you to explain what your background is. Where did you get this passion? What is your education? I'm just kind of wondering everything because your passion shows through, and love the pliers on the side.
Nice.
Probably working.
I didn't
So
mention it
that's- I'm
earlier,
sorry,
but
thank you.
I had come from about, I guess it'd be an hour and a half ago or a little longer ago. I was arm deep in hydraulic oil working on a tractor that had broken down, and I'm going to try to get to Canaquit before 5 and grab the parts, then go back to fixing it. This was just what was in my car. So, but no, to answer your question in really short form, I'm happy to talk afterwards as well. My family moved to a farm when I was, I think about 8 years old. I started riding around with the rancher that we rented the ground to. He was in his 80s at the time, and so started carrying the feed buckets and then throwing hay for him as a teenager. Worked on a sweet corn farm when I was 13, 14, and 15 and saved up money to buy a square baler. So initially I started farming as a high school job. I went off to, and I don't want to say this too loud, but Iowa State, in part because they had an agricultural entrepreneurship initiative at the time. And so I majored in agricultural business with a, I guess, specializing in commodity merchandising. So I was destined to end up at a Cargill or ADM trading grain. But frankly, doing the job shadows there, I didn't enjoy the office. You know, kind of the ADHD in me coming out there. Really enjoyed what farming is and the challenges that it brings, and diversifying into specialty crops. You connect so closely with your community on a daily basis. And so the idea of truly building a sustainable and strong food system, you know, we are not a small producer by any means. We grow about 50 acres of produce, and so we're one of the larger operations in the state. But frankly, to be a 50-acre producer and be one of the larger operators in the state is sad. It's disappointing knowing how many other producers in our region, if the infrastructure and supply chain existed within our region, could be taking advantage of higher dollars per acre, better utilization of their water per acre, you know, at least more dollars garnered per acre per acre foot of water utilized in those on their operations. And so it's been a lot of learning experience, a lot of mentorship, and a lot of just trying to push forward through thick and thin to get where I'm at today.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
you.
Mr. Chair.
Very good. All right. Last chance. Get Scott to the dealership, so I know that's important. And we won't ask you about right to repair. That's for another time. We may have come
Another
back
time.
now. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
for being here. Do you have a question? Oh. I see that. I look forward to that reintroduction next year. But all right. That is what we have for those take part in our informational hearing today. We thank you all for doing that. I think it was a good discussion. Committee members, take what you learned today and be ready, hopefully, as we see what the makeup will be come January in moving forward. But I think those of us that want to continue to serve in the legislature have a good background now of a program that seems to be working. And I think the one thing we can take away from this is that while you know, Kansans are a unique group, Kansans are innovative and have made it through, and every one of these was a different story, but every one of them are helping to take care of neighbors to give them the food they need. So glad we were able to do this. So anything else for the good of the cause? Yes.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, I know that I mentioned when they were here before that they should apply for the Spark funding, and apparently that is happening. And so is there anything that this committee need to do or needs to do or to help them to
I would say as
move along
individual
with that?
members, to talk to members of the Spark Committee, that
Okay.
as they make those decisions. I mean, that's, it's kind of going beyond, and then they're
Yeah.
doing their probably, that's, as far as the committee,
Nothing formal.
I don't
All right.
think anything formal.
All right,
so
well,
no.
thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm
No.
glad they took the
Very
initiative to
good.
do that.
Thank you. All right, now, with that, that is the last committee meeting for this year, so thanks again, and we are adjourned.